Bear down, fam. It's confirmed. The Chicago Bears are done with Illinois. The board already voted, and the landing spot is Hammond, Indiana. Adam Schefter is calling this basically a done deal, and in a minute, I'll tell you why Illinois might still have one card left that could flip the whole thing. And while the stadium gets locked in, Ben Johnson already loaded up his offense. Luther Burden III and Colston Loveland are about to break out in 2026. The numbers that dropped this week put Burden among the best receivers in the entire NFL, not just the rookies, and I'll break down why that's a real problem for the rest of the NFC North. But today's bombshell hits both lines. DeAndre Swift is heading into his contract year with a cap number that puts him on the chopping block. ESPN threw Jonathan Taylor into the Bears conversation, and I'm about to tell you why that connection is a massive mistake if Ryan Poles really wants Max Crosby walking through the doors at Hallis Hall. Bear down, stick around, because this is just getting started. Okay, let's take this piece by piece because it moved fast and I need you to understand every part of it. A few weeks ago, the Chicago Bears Board of Directors met and voted for the first time in this entire saga to formally advance stadium development in Hammond, Indiana. This is not a press statement. This is not a bargaining chip aimed at Springfield. This is an official board vote. President and CEO Kevin Warren and Chairman George McCaskey said it plainly. They believe a world-class project in Hammond will transform the region, connecting Northwest Indiana with the south side of Chicago. And I want to pause right there, because notice something. When the franchise starts talking about connecting Indiana to Chicago instead of building in Chicago, they are telling you, between the lines, that they've already accepted the zip code is changing. Let's walk through how we got here, because this chain of events is the key to understanding why this is not a bluff anymore. Illinois had a bill on the table called the Mega Projects Bill, which would have given the Bears the property tax certainty they needed to finance the Arlington Heights Stadium through payments in lieu of taxes. That bill died at the close of the spring legislative session. It's dead. No final vote in the House. Indiana, meanwhile, had been playing a completely different game for months. Back in February, the Indiana House Ways and Means Committee unanimously approved 24-0 the creation of the Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority, with the power to issue bonds, acquire land, and finance construction. Governor Mike Braun signed that bill into law in late February, and the offer includes up to $1 billion in incentives to bring the Bears to Hammond. Illinois was still arguing. Indiana was signing laws. That's the fundamental difference between these two states over the last 6 months. And that's exactly why I'm not surprised where we ended up. On the Sunday before session ended, State Senator Bill Cunningham, a Chicago Democrat, introduced last-minute legislation that would let Cook County and cities with more than 70,000 residents, meaning Chicago and Arlington Heights, create their own stadium authorities. That bill passed the Illinois Senate 37-17 at 3:39 in the morning on Monday. The House adjourned after 4:30 without voting on it. It just sat there, dead in the water. Look at that sequence with a clear head. While Indiana was building a complete legal framework months in advance, Illinois was drafting amendments at 3 in the morning on the very last day of session. That is not a serious negotiation. That is legislative panic. And the Bears, honestly, have every right not to bet the future of a 91-year-old franchise on a plan that got rushed through at 3 a.m. Now, is everything lost for Illinois? Not quite. And this is the part nobody is saying loud enough. According to reports from the last couple of weeks, Governor J.B. Pritzker said he's willing to call a special summer session if lawmakers can agree on one concrete proposal. State Representative Cam Buckner was even more specific, saying the Bears need to pick between two paths: the payments in lieu of taxes plan that passed the House but not the Senate, or the local stadium authority plan that passed the Senate but not the House. Buckner said Springfield needs to see which one the Bears actually want before any special session gets called. On top of that, in the last 2 weeks, new suitors popped up inside Illinois itself. The village of McCook, with a 150-acre site near 55th Street, offered to literally give away the land and charge $1 a year in rent, with the city covering property taxes. Is that realistic compared to the scale of a $5 billion project? Honestly, I doubt it. But the fact that new offers keep showing up tells me Illinois hasn't fully given up, even if they're acting 6 months too late. I'm going to say what I actually think here, and I don't care if it sounds harsh. Illinois had 6 years. 6 years to solve something Indiana solved in a matter of months with a clear law, a defined budget, and an authority with actual bonding power. And instead, Illinois delivered promises of special sessions, competing committees, and legislation drafted at 3 in the morning. A TalkSport report from mid-June summed it up perfectly. Illinois is treating the Indiana threat like background noise, like it's still a bluff when it stopped being a bluff a long time ago. Do I think the deal is 100% locked in the way Schefter says? Not entirely, because you still need approval from 24 of the 32 NFL owners under Article 4.3 of the league constitution. And the exact site inside Hammond still isn't finalized. with the Lost Marsh Golf Course as the leading candidate, according to Hammond's mayor. But if you ask me which way the scale is tipping right now, the answer is Indiana, and it's not close. And I want to close this story with something important for you as fans. Hammond sits less than 20 miles from Chicago in some spots, way closer to the city than to Indianapolis, which is over 150 miles away. This is not Los Angeles. This is not Las Vegas. Lake Michigan is still right there. This franchise's identity does not get erased by crossing a state line, but you are going to lose something, the pride of saying your team plays in the same state where it was born 91 years ago. And that loss, even if it's symbolic, is going to sting for a long time. Okay, I needed that emotional breather because now I actually get to talk about something that has me genuinely fired up about Bears football in 2026. Two names, Luther Burden III and Colston Loveland. Let's start with Burden, because the number that came out this week from ESPN's Tyler Fulgham is, without exaggeration, one of the most impressive stats I've seen for a second-year receiver. Fulgham pointed out that if Burden had hit the qualifying threshold, he would have finished third among every receiver in the NFL, not just rookies, in yards per route run at 2.92, behind only Puka, Nakua, and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Listen closely, that's not a list of promising rookies, that's a list of the best receivers on the planet. And to put the historical weight of that number in context, other rookies who cleared 2.5 yards per route run in the last decade include Nakua, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Odell Beckham Jr. That's the statistical neighborhood Burden was living in during his rookie year, even after finishing with 47 catches, 652 yards, and 2 touchdowns following a slow start. That yards per route number tells you raw production doesn't tell the whole story. When the ball found him, Burden was creating impact at the level of the best receivers in the league. Now here's the part that really changes the math for 2026. DJ Moore and Olamide Zacchaeus are gone from the roster. That leaves 150 vacated targets from last year, 150 catch opportunities that have to go somewhere. And with Ben Johnson calling plays, Caleb Williams at quarterback, and Rome Odunze still working through what the organization is calling his new normal with the bone structure in his foot, the logic points straight at Burden absorbing a massive chunk of those targets. I'll be honest about something that caught my attention here. The team itself, through writer Gabby Hajduke, wrote back in May that Burden showed exponential growth in just 5 weeks since the start of the offseason program. And she wasn't just talking about his play on the field, she meant his day-to-day mindset. That's exactly the kind of language organizations use when they see a player make the leap from complementary piece to focal point. And his teammate DeAndre Swift described him as a hungry kid who knows his own ability, and that it shows every single day he shows up to work. My honest opinion here, no filter. I think it's a safe bet that Burden becomes Caleb Williams' number 1 option in 2026. Not because anyone else on the roster is bad, but because Johnson's offensive design plus 150 vacated targets creates the perfect setup for a receiver with that level of efficiency to fully break out. And while everyone's talking about the outside receivers, Colston Loveland is quietly building his way toward an all-pro caliber season. Sports Illustrated's Jerry Markarian placed him as the second most likely candidate among all the Bears to reach that level in 2026. And once you look at what he did as a rookie, the case makes itself. Loveland led the entire team in receiving yards as a first-year player, not just tight ends, the entire receiving corps, outside receivers included. That's honestly kind of wild that it doesn't get talked about more, fam. A first-year tight end, marked in a brand new system with a second-year quarterback still learning that same system, leading the whole offense in receiving yards. And on top of that, he's already recognized as an elite-level blocker. The combination, top-tier blocking plus team-leading receiving production, is exactly what separates a good tight end from a truly special one in this league. The relationship with Caleb Williams is the part that excites me the most. Loveland became, in the back half of the season, the guy Williams looked for when a play broke down, the trusted option in crunch time. That kind of trust usually doesn't build in a single year. It builds by surviving pressure together and coming out the other side. And here's an interesting wrinkle from a roster-building standpoint. With the addition of third-round pick Sam Roosh and the continued presence of Cole Kmet, Loveland now sits at the top of a tight end room with 3 genuinely talented players. If there's one coach capable of using that combination wisely, running 2 tight end sets, creating mismatches against linebackers and safeties, it's Ben Johnson, who built his entire reputation doing exactly that in Detroit. My takeaway from this whole package, Burden and Loveland aren't just 2 feel-good individual stories. They're proof that Ben Johnson is building an offense with multiple real threats, not fake ones. And tactically, that's exactly where the best offenses in the league live. When a defense can't shade coverage toward just one guy because there are 3 or 4 equally dangerous options, that's when an offense becomes nearly impossible to game plan for. And to close things out, let's talk about money and hard decisions. Because DeAndre Swift just walked into the most important year of his Bears career without even asking for it. Swift signed a 3-year, $24 million contract back in March of 2024, and 2026 is literally the last year of that deal. He's coming off the best season of his career, 1,087 rushing yards on 223 carries, a 4.9 yards per carry average, 9 rushing touchdowns, plus 34 catches for 299 yards. All career highs. His PFF rushing grade was 86.6, 7th among 55 qualified running backs in the league. Now here's the financial number that actually matters. His cap hit in 2026 is $8.8 million. But if the Bears decided to cut him, the dead cap charge would only be $1.83 million. That means a net cap savings of roughly $7 million if Poles wanted to move in a different direction. That number is exactly why Swift, despite coming off his best season, keeps showing up on cut candidate lists. And here's the real tension. Swift and Kyle Monangai combined for 2,456 rushing yards last season, the third best rushing attack in the entire league. Statistically, that's one of the best running back duos in the NFL right now. But Ben Johnson has known Swift since their days together in Detroit. And there's also a belief that Johnson might want to bring in a young back to form the next duo alongside Monangai, thinking beyond this contract year. My honest take, you don't move on from a running back who helped produce the league's third best rushing attack just because his contract is expiring. If Swift comes out in 2026 playing at last year's level, the conversation should be about extending him, not cutting him. Releasing him for cap savings before even seeing how he responds in a contract year would be, to me, a purely reactive move with no real football logic behind it. ESPN's Ben Solak floated the idea that if the Colts start slow and consider an organizational change, mid-season, Jonathan Taylor could end up in Chicago. And look, I get why that sounds appealing on paper. Taylor is, without question, one of the best running backs in the league, probably underrated for playing in a small market. But here's where I have to be straight with you. That connection ignores the full reality of the Bears roster. Day Windy City laid this out clearly, and I agree with the core of the argument. The Bears cannot spend trade capital on another running back when the number one priority on this roster, without question, is the defensive line. Max Crosby is the top target on this franchise's radar, and he's probably going to spark a bidding war between several teams. If Poles spends significant assets on Taylor, that directly shrinks what he can offer for Crosby. And there's an additional argument here that I think is decisive. Even without Eric Bieniemy as running backs coach, who left for Kansas City, the Bears' ground game should be just fine in 2026, especially if Monangai takes the leap a lot of analysts are expecting in year 2. It's not that Taylor wouldn't help. Obviously, any back at that level makes any offense better. The right question isn't whether Taylor helps. The right question is whether the Bears need him badly enough to sacrifice resources that should go toward the defense. And my answer, straight up, is no. Honestly, the smarter suggestion I read this week went the other direction entirely. Instead of adding another running back, the Bears should be looking to sell high on Cole Kmet while his value is still there, stacking up more draft picks before even thinking about adding another offensive weapon. That lines up perfectly with what we talked about a few weeks ago regarding Kmet, Kansas City, and Cleveland. Poles needs to be thinking about trade-offs, not stockpiling offensive talent the roster doesn't need. My conclusion on this last block, the Bears already have an offense that's going to be one of the best in the conference with what's currently on the roster. Ryan Poles' summer and fall work should not be about adding more offensive talent. It should be 100% focused on fixing the defensive line before the trade deadline. That's everything I've got for you today, fam. And yeah, the stadium news hurts, it really does, because we're talking about 91 years of history packing up boxes for another state. But there are real reasons to be excited about what Ben Johnson is building on the field. Burden and Loveland are turning into the two nightmares this franchise has needed for years. And in the backfield and along the defensive line, Ryan Poles has some big decisions ahead, and from what I'm seeing, his priorities look pretty clear. Bear down, always, no matter which state we end up playing in. If this video gave you something, hit the like button, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Do you care more about saving the Bears for Illinois, or have you already made peace with Hammond? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.